All right, what's up, everyone? It's Andrew Bone here, BamaInsider.com. Talking a little bit today about the NFL draft. Obviously, a big night. It's usually a big night for Alabama. Usually a big night for Nick Saban. He's what we've seen over the course of the last several years with Nick Saban, and I'm very interested to see kind of what happens this evening. He makes a lot of phone calls the night of the NFL draft. He talks to a lot of top recruits. He has a list of several top guys that he reaches out to and speaks with, and basically tells them, hey, listen. I'm at the first round of the NFL draft. We have players that are being drafted tonight, and if you come to Alabama, you can be in the same situation. He loves this opportunity. It's a great opportunity for him in Alabama to sell it to recruits. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens this evening. Now, today's show. Not really going to update everyone on recruiting, what's going on, in this 2020 recruiting class. What I'm going to talk about today is just kind of talk about the NFL draft, the guys that are going in, the guys that, some of these guys that came out early, and the guys that we expect to go in the next couple of days in the NFL draft. Just kind of, and not necessarily talking about their, rise from, the recruiting part to college to where they're at now. I'm just going to kind of reminisce on their recruiting saga, kind of what happened. As many of you know, I've been in this recruiting business for going on, I guess it'd be 16 years. We started in maybe 17 years. It's been a while. So many of y'all know that. Been around the block, and I've seen a lot of top players, followed a lot of these guys throughout their recruitment, developed several relationships with these guys, and been to a lot of announcements, been to a lot of games, etc. So what I'm going to talk about is just kind of reminisce on these guys' recruitments. So we'll start with Quinnen Williams. Quinnen Williams, probably going to be top 5 pick, I would assume. It'd be shocking if he wasn't. This evening, Quinnen had an interesting recruitment because, and we're actually going to talk about another kid who grew up an Auburn fan as well. But Quinnen Williams grew up an Auburn fan, in-state kid out of Winona High School here in Birmingham. He committed to Auburn very early, and then decided to continue to take visits. I mean, when he committed to Auburn, I think it was late January, he said, he was, a lifelong Auburn fan. That's where he wanted to go. It was always his dream to commit to Auburn. And then during the spring, Alabama really started to kind of, amp up their recruiting efforts in him. They started to, heavily pursue him. Actually, Mario Cristobal, Oregon's head coach, was his lead recruiter. Really did a tremendous job recruiting Q for Alabama, and we saw Quinnen Williams visit Alabama during the spring, and still some people were like, he's not going to flip. He's a diehard Auburn fan, and then he came to Alabama's camp in the early spring, or excuse me, in the early summer, and Alabama basically made him a top priority. They wanted him really bad in their recruiting class, and in late June, he ended up flipping from Auburn to Alabama. So obviously, that was a big recruiting win for the Crimson Tide. Now, growing up an Auburn fan, being an in-state kid, going to continue to have a ton of interaction with the Auburn coaching staff. Going to continue to get pressured from them, and it may even take a few visits. But with Quinnen, he pretty much stayed solid with Alabama throughout the entire process. I think he may have visited Auburn one more time, but he was very solid with Alabama. Now, I always look back and and listen to whether these different people, or I guess they're maybe looking at different recruiting rankings and stuff like that. But I always see people talk about how Quinnen Williams was ranked as a 3-star recruit coming out of high school, and how he just exploded onto the scene. He wasn't a 3-star on Rivals. He was actually the number 4 overall player in the state of Alabama. Now, you look at it now and you're like, okay, well, he was underranked as the number 4 player in the state. But I think he was number 104 overall in the Rivals 250. So still a very high ranking. I think Rivals thought very highly of him. I thought very highly of him. I was really trying to push him to be in that Rivals 100 because I thought he was an elite defensive lineman. I actually thought he was going to be more of a defensive end once he got to the next level. So was kind of surprised, once he moved into defensive tackle, but and got as big as he did. But obviously, tremendous career. Now, you look back at the rankings, and I think anybody would say, okay, well, now it makes sense. Who were the top 3 players in the state of Alabama that year? Well, it was Marlon Davidson, who signed with Auburn, Mack Wilson, and Ben Davis. Obviously, Ben Davis hasn't had the career that many expected. But if you go back then, I think everybody had those 3 guys as the top 3, and nobody, it was always kind of which one's number 1, which one's number 3. I mean, it was kind of rotating. You could kind of just put them all in a hat and draw 1 through 3, and everyone thought those were easily the top 3 players in the state of Alabama that year. So, and Quentin was number 4, so, on Rivals. So I thought that Rivals did a good job, at least ranking him high, and having a good feeling about him. Now, obviously, he developed and became a All-American and had a tremendous career. And we'll see him going early tonight in the NFL draft. Really excited for him. Now, Jonah Williams. Jonah Williams was he had an interesting recruitment because his family is originally from the Southeast, and I think his one family member went to Georgia, one family member went to Auburn, but a lot of people assumed he was going to Auburn. He kind of did a Southeast tour early on after his junior year, right before kind of spring, visited Alabama, Georgia, Auburn, and he was one of those kids that did not care about recruiting at all. I mean, I don't think he ever did a single interview. He got invited to every All-American game, didn't go to any All-American games, didn't go to any camps, but he was still rated a 5-star prospect. Now, we don't see that too often because, most of the time these recruiting analysts, experts, national guys, regional guys, they want to see these guys. Now, I know our guy out on the West Coast, Adam Gorney, had some opportunities to see Jonah Williams during his junior year and senior year, and he was like, this kid is a definite 5-star. So, going out and seeing him was great. But, you also want to see kids in camps. You want to see them, a little bit on the recruiting trail. And Jonah was just, I think the only time he ever tweeted anything or posted anything on social media was the day that he committed to Alabama. I mean, he was just kind of a no BS type guy. Didn't like the limelight, just liked to go out there and get stuff done. And he's had a tremendous career at Alabama. Is going to be high, be a high draft pick tonight. We expect him to go in the first round, as many do. But he's certainly, he was certainly one of those kids that, you didn't really have to worry about. Definitely just bring your lunch pail to work type guy and go to work. I thought he was, a tremendous player at Alabama. I think he's going to be a tremendous NFL player. Let's talk about another potential first round NFL draft pick tonight, Josh Jacobs. I mean, we all know the Josh Jacobs story. We've read about it. There's a great article in the Players Tribune today, written by Josh Jacobs himself. So I encourage you guys to check that out. But Josh was obviously a late addition to Alabama's recruiting class. And I say late addition. He announced his commitment to Alabama the day before signing day, but Alabama had the number. Alabama actually had the number 1 running back in the country committed to them and signed with them, B.J. Emmons. And we kind of know that B.J. ended up, leaving Alabama, transferring out. And Alabama had signed the number 1 running back in the country the year before in Damian Harris, and they get B.J. Emmons in the 2016 class. So Alabama was kind of looking for another running back in 2016. There was a couple guys that they really liked a lot. One was in state that they were trying to flip hard, Michael Pirine. starting running back over at Florida now. They really like Michael P. Ryan a lot, and they were trying hard to flip him. Had him at camp during the summer. Then he visited during the football season and made an official visit. A lot of people thought that he was going to flip. Now, Alabama kind of held out all the way up until the end to kind of see what was going on with him, but ended up not flipping. Now, they had another guy that they were interested in out of Texas, Devon Penamon. They really liked Devon Penamon a lot. They actually thought that there was a good chance that he was going to go to Alabama, and he ended up going to Ole Miss. So when they finally got the answer from both of those guys a couple of days before signing day, they basically went out there and told Josh Jacobs, "Hey, we've got a spot for you." Going back, they probably wish, all right, we should have recruited Josh Jacobs from the very beginning. But you just never know. A lot of these guys develop during their senior season, or they get noticed as a senior. He had such a tremendous senior season. I think he rushed for over 2,000 yards. And Alabama, took notice of him. I think his only, really big offer was from Tulsa. Now, I know Oklahoma recruited him, but I'm not sure if he was able to commit to them at the time. But I think he was going to end up going to Tulsa, and Alabama comes through, extends him an offer, and I just remember when he was a true freshman, a lot of people were talking about him like, oh, we saw him in the spring game, and everybody's like, who is this kid? Josh just had a tremendous career, tremendous story. Everyone's extremely excited about him. Everybody's rooting for him. So I think that he just has a tremendous heart, tremendous desire to be a tremendous player at the next level. It's been a lot of fun watching him over the course of the last few years, and I think he's going to have a great career. So we'll see where he goes. A lot of people predicting he's going to the Raiders. I think there's a lot of Alabama kids that are being predicted to the Raiders, Jonah Williams included, for this evening. So it'll be interesting to see if they end up getting Quinnen and Josh Jacobs this evening. I don't know if we have any Raiders fans listening to the show right now, but if we do, I'm sure some of you are pretty excited about that. Now, talk about Mack Wilson. Now, these are some of the guys that are probably going to go second, third round, and maybe Irv Smith ends up going to the in the first round. We'll see what happens tonight, but and I'll talk about him in a minute. But Mack Wilson, big time player in the 2016 class, 5-star recruit. First remember seeing Mack Wilson when I was going down to Carver High School in Montgomery and watching Sean Dion Hamilton. And Sean Dion, kept telling me, it's like, hey, you got to watch this sophomore. He's really good. And it was easy to see. It's like, okay, this kid, he definitely looks like a senior in high school for college freshman. Definitely had that look when he was just a sophomore. And everybody kind of knew that Mack was, he was going to kind of follow in Sean Dion's footsteps. He was just a regular down in Tuscaloosa. He was always there. Obviously, Alabama, their tradition at the linebacker position, their need at the linebacker position in his 2016 class, big need. But for some reason, Mack wanted to just enjoy the recruiting process. Now, I know Alabama really tried to get him to commit early. They wanted him to kind of be a leader in the recruiting class, commit, during the spring or summer, and just really help kind of, recruit guys. But he really wanted to enjoy the recruiting process. He wanted to take visits. He wanted to take official visits and just kind of enjoy things. And he took it all the way down until the very end. And now there were some people who thought, all right, maybe he is going to end up going to Georgia or maybe Auburn's really in the mix, or Florida, and he took those visits. But in the end, as we all expected, announced for Alabama. I mean, it was, the most obvious thing that we ever expected in recruiting. Everybody was, all right, he's going to announce for Alabama. Now, if he would have announced for anywhere else, obviously it would have shocked everyone. But he ends up committing to Alabama, and he. Like I said, he was just, it was just an easy recruitment. I mean, he was a great kid to deal with. He was always very respectful, always, even though, a lot of these 5-star kids, once they become seniors and they're getting so many phone calls, they're, a lot of them just kind of, they quit talking to the media. He was always one of those kids who was always available, always wanted to talk, and I don't know if he was doing that with everybody. He was at least doing that with me. And we still talk. I mean, Mack's still a guy that I reach out to from time to time. But he's he's a great kid. Some people think that he should have come back early, but he's still projected to go in the second round. I think that he's got a chance to go in the second round. I don't think he'll go in the first round tonight, but as many don't project him to. But I do think he'll go in the second round, maybe third round over the course of the weekend, and he'll do well. We'll move on to Deonte Thompson. Deonte was, most of these guys that we've been talking about were all in the 2016 class. Deonte was actually, he was in the 2015 class. But it felt like he committed, way before that, and he did. He committed after his sophomore football season, and he was still a sophomore when he committed to Alabama. I remember when he was a freshman, and even during his I guess maybe during the summer of his after his freshman year. Him going to Alabama and going to Alabama's camp and standing out and getting an offer. He's from the state of Texas, so you never know how things may go there because there are so many schools in the state of Texas that are recruiting him, that want him. But Deonte was certainly a high-profile kid, and it was when he committed early, I think it shocked a lot of people because he was just a sophomore. But he stayed true throughout his entire recruitment. And I used to see Deonte at different camps. I would go to, different rivals camps, and he went to multiple 5-star challenges. I think he went to the 5-star challenge when he was a junior and the one when he was a senior. And I never once saw him just work on one side of the ball. He worked on both sides of the ball. He worked at defensive back. He worked at wide. He loved playing wide receiver at camps, and he was very dominant. I mean, he was fun to watch. Always just so energetic. Always had a lot of passion out on the field, and he was one of those kids that at every camp he was running both sides of the ball, as I mentioned earlier. But he stayed pretty much true throughout his entire recruitment. Never really wavered. Never really took any other visits. I think maybe when he was maybe going into his junior year, he took a few visits. I think he went to A&M, and I think he went to Baylor, but in Texas. But wasn't really interested in those schools. I mean, it was always just like, I'm going to Alabama. That's the bottom line, and stuck with it. So Deonte obviously had a great rise as a junior this past year. A lot of people weren't sure going into this past season who was going to step up at defensive back. And we remembered Deonte having such a great playoff run from the previous year, and there was a lot of expectations, and he lived up to those expectations as a junior and did extremely well. So Irv Smith. Irv was also a member of that 2016 class. I mean, Jonah Williams, Josh Jacobs, and Mack Wilson. I mean, just a tremendous 2016 class for Alabama. Irv, committed very early to Texas A&M, and nobody really, in terms of Alabama fans, Alabama reporters, nobody really knew about him until kind of late in the process. We ended up finding out, and I guess it was probably mid-January, that this kid from this tight end from New Orleans was going to take an official visit to Alabama. Didn't really know a ton about him. Started learning a little bit. Obviously, learning the fact that his dad played in the NFL for the New Orleans Saints, and he ends up making the trip over to Tuscaloosa and just falling in love with it. And we had heard, kind of maybe a day or two before, and it may have been sooner than that. It may have been a couple of days. I can't really remember. But we were told that he was going to flip from A&M to Alabama, and it didn't happen right away. I mean, it happened on National Signing Day. So he waited all the way until National Signing Day, announced for Alabama at his high school, and obviously he had a tremendous career at Alabama as well. Those are some of the guys that I wanted to kind of discuss. I mean, obviously we're going to see, a few others. Isaiah Buggs. I'm interested. I really liked, what he was able to do at Alabama over the course of the last 2 years. Thought he brought a lot of heart, a lot of leadership to Alabama on the defensive front. A quick story about Isaiah Buggs is, everyone thought Isaiah was going to Alabama from the get-go. He had a tremendous relationship. Now, he's from Louisiana, went to Mississippi Gulf Coast, but a lot of people thought that he was going to Alabama when Bo Davis was the defensive line coach at Alabama. Bo Davis ends up leaving Alabama, and Isaiah Buggs basically eliminated Alabama from his list. I mean, he was going to go to Auburn or LSU or maybe one of the Mississippi schools. I mean, nobody really had Alabama as a finalist for him anymore. But Alabama kind of stayed on him. Carl Dunbar, back then the new defensive line coach, came in and started recruiting him, but still not really a ton of interest. Well, I remember it was in December, pretty much before he signed, maybe a couple weeks before Isaiah Buggs signed his letter of intent. People still weren't thinking that Buggs was going to Alabama. They were thinking most people were thinking at the time it was LSU or Auburn. I think most people thought LSU. But Carl Dunbar went and did an in-home visit. But he didn't do it with him. Isaiah Buggs wasn't available. He did an in-home visit with just his mom. I think maybe his grandmother, and Isaiah would just love that so much. I mean, he was really kind of blown away by all that Coach Dunbar would go and just meet with his family with him not there. And that happens. I mean, it happens more than you think in recruiting with coaches. But it really struck a chord with Isaiah Buggs. He really liked that, and ended up making the official visit to Alabama, I think, the following weekend, and that was pretty much it for him. I mean, he absolutely loved that, and that was a big reason. Another JUCO guy, Savion Smith, who went to originally started at LSU and from IMG Academy to LSU, then decided to leave LSU, went to junior college, and then ends up at Alabama. I mean, I remember, he visited Alabama during the spring, and it was pretty much a done deal from there. When he made that first visit to Alabama, it was like, all right, this kid's going to Alabama. There's nowhere else he's going. And that's pretty much it. So we kind of went through all the guys that, are going to be going in the NFL draft. It's going to be interesting to see, kind of what numbers they go to, what teams they go to. We know so many kids from Alabama. It's like every single team in the NFL has an Alabama player on there. Maybe the Browns end up getting an Alabama kid. I don't know I don't think the Browns have anybody besides the head coach, Freddie Kitchens. But let me scroll through the questions real quick. Sorry guys, I'm probably going to skip some of these other questions if they're not about the draft. I'm watching from Japan. Hey, shout out. Hey, thanks for watching. I can't make out your name there, but thanks for joining in today. Let's see. Josh might be the biggest diamond in the rough. I certainly agree with you there, Will. All right. Josh was an option QB, I believe. Yeah, he was. He ran the option at quarterback for his high school team as a senior, and rushed for over 2,000 yards at that position. Let's see. What about Irv Smith? We talked about Irv. Gonna miss Mack. Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, good deal, guys. That's going to be it for today. Enjoy watching the draft this weekend. I'll be back next week. I'm going to talk, we'll talk a little bit about the, what's going on in recruiting, kind of get you guys a little update on, just the overall class, what's been going on during the spring so far. So let's see. How many first round picks do I think Alabama will have next year? Several probably. We'll have to wait and see who all comes out. But I mean, I think Alabama could easily have, 2 first round picks at wide receiver come out next year. We'll see who else. I mean, there's going to be a lot of guys that I think Alabama's got a good chance to have. And you never know. I mean, you never know who's going to emerge this year. I mean, I don't think anyone expected Quentin Williams or Josh Jacobs to be a first-round NFL draft pick, or Irv Smith, first or second-round draft pick. Nobody was expecting that heading into this upcoming season, this past season. So we'll see what happens this upcoming season. See who ends up emerging, because we're certainly going to have some guys that are going to emerge as big-time players. Who do I think will fall or rise? I don't know. We were seeing a lot of mock drafts early on of Herb Smith being the first round draft pick, and now it seems like every mock draft has him second or third round. So it seems like he may have fallen a little bit. Quentin Williams isn't going to fall. Really interested to see what happens with Josh Jacobs, but I think with Marshawn Lynch retiring, I think everyone just assumes that Oakland's going to go with Josh Jacobs, I think he'll go to Oakland as well. Jonah Williams is going to be a high draft pick, so I think the three guys that everyone assumes from Alabama that are going to be first round draft picks, I think all those guys are going to be first round draft picks, and we'll just have to kind of wait and see what happens. I think Isaiah Buggs is a lot better than what we're seeing in these mock drafts. Deonte Thompson can be a great NFL safety. I think he's got a chance, a lot like, you know what? I'm glad that someone just mentioned Christian Miller. But Deonte Thompson, as I said, I certainly think that he's got a chance to, be a really good NFL safety. Reminds me a lot of Eddie Jackson. I mean, he's just got a lot of range, got a lot of length, great wingspan. I think he's got a chance to be a great NFL player. Christian Miller, I mean, I would really like to see him, drafted in the mid rounds. I don't know if he'll be a fifth or sixth round pick. I'd like to see him be, maybe a fourth round guy. I think the injuries have kind of, held scouts back a little bit on him, but tremendous quickness. I mean, he's got a great NFL pedigree. Has great speed. It was funny. It was funny watching him, or say funny. It was fun watching him develop from being this 200-pound, kid in high school to being, 235 pounds, and which everyone expected him to grow into this 235, 240-pound kid. And he was really thin coming out of high school, and he just had a tremendous growth throughout his entire college career. He originally committed to Florida. Early in the spring, and then I think it was I want to say it was mid to late July of his senior season. And I say that because I was at a Hoover 7-on-7 camp, the Hoover National 7-on-7 Select Camp, which is in mid July. And I'd gotten a phone call saying that Christian Miller was committing to Alabama. So that's kind of why I know when he committed. But yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see how he gets drafted, this weekend. But I certainly think he'll get drafted and be a good player for whatever program. But like I said earlier, this is a tremendous opportunity for Nick Saban. You're going to see a lot of, if you follow, me on Twitter, I'll probably be retweeting a lot of stuff, recruiting material that Alabama is going to be sending out over the course of the weekend regarding the NFL draft and stuff like that. And please follow us at BamaInsider.com. We'll have a ton of content on Bama Insider this weekend from the NFL draft. And if you haven't yet, if you're watching the show, click subscribe on the YouTube channel. Just exit out, click subscribe, and you should be good. So you'll know when we do these recruiting shows on the YouTube channel. But that is going to be it for today. Thank y'all for joining, and enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the draft. Thanks.